Mike Golic.
I'm Jessica Smetana.
Welcome. It's Golic and Smetty. I'm Mike Golic Sr. She is Jess Smetana. We are at it yet again. Great show today. Mike Lombardi, he's basically our teammate now at DraftKings and VSiN, but for years, whether it was a scout or a pro player personnel, director of personnel, GM in the NFL for a number of years, worked for Bill Walsh and Bill Belichick. So we're going to talk with him about the draft and other things in the NFL coming up in a little bit, Jess. But I guess the big news out is right before, we started taping this is I know Stugatz will be very happy about this. The trade for Aaron Rodgers finally went through, and he is now a New York Jet. My gosh, the drama is over.
Okay, Mike, before we get to, as many are calling it, our long national nightmare finally ending. The 40 days, I wonder if he purposely picked a biblical amount of days from like the visit, the Woody Johnson visit to now, or whenever he was on the McAfee show, whatever. The 40 days is over. But before we get to that, Mike, I need to tell you how washed I feel right now, because we just did a Le Batard show physical activity event where I had to like basically work out for a half hour, and I can't tell you more than that because it's a secret.
Okay.
But my eyes are glazing over as we are speaking right now. I cannot do an afternoon workout and then talk to you, Mike, because I'm fading.
So do you work out? What
Yes.
Do you have a workout routine?
I do. In fact, I worked out this morning as well as this afternoon, which is I think why I'm dying.
Yeah,
but
that was a mistake.
Mike, I truly, like, my eyes are beginning to water, and like they're, the thing where you're out of focus a little bit. That's happening to me right now. So we'll keep going as long as I make it. But if at any point I zone out for a while, it's because inside I'm dying.
You should start to drink heavily right now is what you should start to do.
Yeah, I probably should drink some water, actually.
Was it? Yeah, you should.
Idea.
Was it that much of a different workout routine than what you're normally used to? Is that what did it? I know you can't really tell me much.
Yes, I would say yes, it was. It was intense.
So are you telling me everybody on that crew did this workout?
Yeah, but I definitely did it the most, like, I was ready to go.
Well, yeah, because it's a bunch of guys who don't give a shit. I mean, how about, was Stugatz there? Did he do it?
No, because if he was, he would not be
no
breathing right now.
He would never do it.
Yeah.
Well, good luck in your recovery. Water, I mess around about you should drink heavily right now, but it should be water. You got to keep going.
That would be a good idea. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you play pickleball and then hop right on with us or whatever you do.
We had some good pickleball the other day. Me and Chris were playing Ben and Sydney. And the thing is, Ben and Sydney are starting to get better. They actually beat us 2 out of 3 this time. Chris and I have owned them, and I played horrible this time, I have to say. Up at the net, they were forced. They were my own fault. It was bad job out of me. But man, it's a lot of fun. We're thinking of. So you're going to make it out to our golf tournament again, right? You have to defend your long drive.
Oh, yeah, I have to. Closest to the pin, I believe it was.
Close to the pin, that was it. So we're actually thinking of, if it won't be this year because logistically we got to figure out a way to make it a golf tournament and pickleball event. We want to incorporate that as well.
I love that idea.
Yeah, because not everybody wants to golf all the time. And, a lot of those things are just for golfers. So we have the party the night before, but maybe some of those people can come and play pickleball while other people play golf. But we got to figure out a place. We don't want it at 2 different locations.
Yeah.
So we got to figure out where we can set it up at the Warren, the course.
It sounds like we need to build Mike Golic Memorial Pickleball courts at Notre Dame on campus.
That could be it. Everybody wants their name on a dorm or on a dormitory or on an academic building.
I'll chip in. I'll chip in on this. I'll give
Golic
you like
and Smetty,
$50.
That's okay.
That would be
Golic
great.
and Smetty pickleball courts.
Let's do that. This is a great idea. Let's do this.
I like that a lot.
Let's raise some money, Mike.
I'm for that.
Courts.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that in tournaments. So that may we will look into that. You keep drinking water, and I guess
we'll see if I make it.
All the Jet fans out there, which is amazing to me, they probably still will look at this as a negative. They're still going to wait for the shoe to drop, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they traded for a Packers quarterback a few, a decade or so ago, and it didn't work out for them. So is this going to be history repeating itself?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like they have a terrible track record with quarterbacks, whether traded or drafted. They have just not been a successful franchise probably as long as I've been alive. So yeah, I could see why they would be a little negative regarding Aaron Rodgers, because they're probably all very cynical fans, but they should be excited because he's won the MVP like 4 times. Granted, didn't have his best season last year, but he was still very good. He also was injured. So
I'm excited for them. Get an O-lineman with the pick at 13. Brees Hall coming back from injury. I love him. Garrett Wilson, you're helping out on the outside, and you said it, great defense. So I think they could be in a nice position.
But I could see why their fan base is cynical.
Sure. Without a doubt.
Makes a lot of sense.
They just look up and wait for something to fall on their head.
Right.
So
yeah.
We'll get into that with Michael Lombardi, the draft, and the court, and he and Jalen Hurts that signed as well. We'll do that. NBA playoffs are going on right now. We're still kind of working through the first round. The only team out of that is the 76ers. They swept Brooklyn 4-0. So that one is over. There's a few others that are 3-1. Knicks are up 3-1 on Cleveland. Denver's up 3-1 on Minnesota. They staved off being swept. But we're dealing with the injuries we were dealing with. We talked about Ja Morant, but he is back with that right hand injury. Giannis Antetokounmpo looks like he's going to be back, and they need him because they're down at the taping of this 2-1 to the Miami Heat. De'Aaron Fox for Sacramento. He cracked the tip of his finger in Game 4. That series is 2-2 with Golden State. So we'll see if he can play or not with that. But where I wanted to go, Jess, and this involves more your boyfriend Lee than you.
Okay.
But I want you to you've probably been next to him on the couch when something like this has happened to see a reaction. I'm talking about the nut shot. Okay? We've seen it now 3 times in the playoffs, okay?
Yeah, the James Harden one was a moment for us when he got ejected and Lee was like, "What was that for?" And then they watched the replay and he's like, "Oh, I get it." And I was like,
see, that's where I want to go. So you have James Harden with the clear out nut shot. You have Dylan Brooks with the "I'm going for the ball," and he hit both balls on LeBron James and got tossed for that.
Yeah.
And Harden got tossed. And to me, the most egregious one, laying on his back, dude's on top of him, and he just kicks up with his size 30 shoe, and just lifts the boys into the dude's lower stomach. And he only gets a flagrant 1. He doesn't even get tossed for that. So women can't really, when they see that go, oh, because, I think we know why.
I can't picture what it feels like.
But so you're sitting next to Lee, and Lee sees that, whether it was one of those 3 or another one. I mean, it's a reaction out of guys, isn't it?
Oh, always. I mean, I always watch sports with like a group of people, and it's always the same thing. And I just kind of sit there and I'm like, meh, like, cool. I don't really react much, but there's always a reaction in the room. Like, you're absolutely right. Even though it seems like the most, no pun intended, low hanging fruit reactions during a sporting event, it's still a thing. It still happens. Even the younger generations reacting to the nut shot.
Yeah, and pretty much any guy has gone through that. I had one time in the league, Jess, I was with the Eagles, and it was a goal line play. We were the other team was off. It was the Giants, and they were like on the 1 yard line. So I'm a D lineman. I'm down really low, right? And our job is to just kind of shoot forward and try and recreate the line of scrimmage. So I'm over the right guard, and I just kind of shoot down low, and he's on top of my back a little bit toward my head, but my legs are free. And I see, even laying there, the back is cutting back behind me, going to the goal line. So I whipped my leg around heel first. And let me tell you, Jess, I felt nothing but soft tissue.
Ugh.
I mean, and I swung my leg hard. He went down like a sack of potatoes. Now, he fell into the end zone and he still scored. But I mean, I gut shotted him so bad, Jess, that it took me a while. But I think about 15 years later, when I was doing Mike and Mike at ESPN, we brought him on the show, and I apologized publicly for kicking him into couillons on that play.
Did he thank you because then he didn't need to get a vasectomy later in life?
Yeah,
saved him some money on a medical procedure.
Because I think that some people think that football players wear cups. We do not.
Yeah. No, I know.
You do not, because all the different ways that you fall.
Most professional athletes don't, I don't think.
No. I mean,
even baseball players, really.
Yeah, in football, you think of the way you fall, it would pinch or it wouldn't be good.
Ow.
So,
Yeah.
no. That was those are tough calls. So we had 3 prominent ones go on in the playoffs. So, again, we're
my favorite is when the announcers try to talk around it, though. That's always the highlight for me.
Listen, I think you just got to call it like you see it. I mean, you just have to, because I've done that. You just use a word that won't get you in FCC trouble.
Right.
You use some humorous term, for a nut shot. It's probably not what you want to say, but you got to call it as you see it. Looks like he hit him in the upper stomach. No, he didn't hit him in the upper stomach. He hit him in the couillons, okay? That's where he hit him, not in the upper stomach. He wouldn't have reacted like that had he got hit in the upper stomach or lower stomach or whatever. You got to call it as you see it, don't you think?
It's a lower body injury, as they say in hockey.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's exactly right. I do like the way hockey does their injuries. I think it is
so
pretty cool.
unnecessarily big, but well.
All right, enough of that. We'll see where that continues to go. Again, we'll talk with Michael Lombardi. We got draft. We got quarterbacks to talk about as well. So we will get to that next. All right, Michael, here we go. Another draft. One, you have been part of many of these on your years through the NFL. A couple stops in Cleveland, obviously San Francisco, Philadelphia, the Raiders as well. So I love this, though. You started out at UNLV. This is what I always loved. When I would get ready to call games, I loved going over coaches and or managements, like their history. So where you are now, or what you were going through the NFL, go all the way back to first getting into this. What was it, 81 to 84, UNLV, the recruiting coordinator. And just that's back in my years at Notre Dame. Sorry, Jess, we're the old
No, I mean, you started out with like an old you've been doing this for a long time.
Listen,
buddy.
he knows I'm not digging at him. We're around the same age, so we've been doing this for a while.
I wouldn't take it that way, Mike. I appreciate it. Hello, thanks for having me. I was fortunate in life that I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and I saw this guy on television that looked like he belonged in my family dinners. He had a big nose and olive skin, and then I had this guy telling me to cross Highway 9 and chase a dream, and I combined those two things. So when I went to college, I knew I couldn't play pro football, but I wanted to be involved in football. So I just started going to coaching clinics when I was at Hofstra University in the off season. And I would go for years and drive my little Toyota around. And I got a job for no money here at Las Vegas as an assistant to an assistant. And I started my career here. And then I was fortunate enough to become Bill Walsh's driver, which was the greatest job I ever had in my life. I carried his bags. I drove his car. I did whatever he wanted me to do. And I worked in scouting. And then from there, I just was able to kind of start my career. So I've been really blessed. I'm fortunate to be around two of the greatest coaches of all time, obviously Bill Walsh and Bill Belichick, and then working for Al Davis was a great learning experience for me. So I've been really blessed. I look at this experience as a life well lived.
Hey, Jess, I want to ask you something of what he said, because I know and understand it because I did it as well, when he said, I worked for no money. Does your generation understand that at all? Sometimes when you start out, that you have to work for no money?
The federal minimum wage hasn't increased in like 30 years. I think our generation understands.
But we said no money, though.
We said no money, Jess.
Minimum wage. I was getting Holiday Inn coupons to go to and Burger King coupons. That's how
which is ridiculous, because I'm sure Al Davis or whoever you were working for at the time was probably making like bajillions of dollars.
Do you know Al Davis? You know how he paid? I mean, come on.
I know how his son used to cut his hair. So, yeah, I guess he probably wasn't spending a lot of the extra money he was making on things. So, nothing surprises me.
I think Al Davis pays like the Chargers do now.
I mean, back then it was a luxury to work in the NFL. You know this, Mike. I mean, before this TV revenue hit, I mean, guys kept jobs for a long time. And, the owners really didn't have this kind of wealth. I mean, for a team to be sold for $6 billion now or plus, I mean, back when I started in '84 with the 49ers, the TV revenue per team was $16 million per team.
I mean, it really is incredible where it was and where it is now. And you mentioned, and I was going to bring it up because there's a couple things to talk about. I want to concentrate on the draft now, and then we had the trade go through with Aaron Rodgers. So there's a lot to get in with you. As you mentioned, you know, you're from a scout to personnel director, director of player personnel, to GM. And you mentioned the two of the guys you were with, and Bill Walsh and Bill Belichick. So let's start there, especially getting ready for the draft. What are some of the biggest takeaways you learned from those guys as you're preparing your draft board?
I think the number one thing, both of them echoed this commentary all the time, is it doesn't matter where we pick the players, it matters how they play. And we are in constant conversations about this. You should pick this guy 5. No, he's not good at 5, but he would be good at 12. Oh, no, you can't pick him there. My board says you can't pick him there. It's all nonsense, right? Doesn't matter. It only matters how they play, you know, and that's is the end of the day is we're grading players for a draft to describe how they will play for our team. The description tells you where you should pick the player, not just saying he's a first rounder or he's a second. It means nothing. And both of them really believe that. And both of them believe that there were players out there that if given an opportunity, they could be really good, that it didn't matter about their pedigree. It only mattered about how they played.
As far as so, as you look at players through the years, so let's look at this year's draft, and you know there's the height, weight, all the combine stuff, which that could be a whole nother discussion. But then tape of how they actually look on the field. But then you start to throw in stuff. You have a Laramie Tunsil situation, a Warren Sapp situation, something off the field that happens. And this year it's Jalen Carter, an absolute, you know, devastating player on the field, but now some of those questions off the field. How do you go about evaluating that and putting that into the sequence?
Well, the first rule of scouting is to know more about the players before you draft them than after. And so today, when I started in the league, you could go to Notre Dame to scout Mike Golic, and the coaches there would tell you everything you didn't know about him. You could go in the training room, and the trainers would tell you every injury. They would give you everything. They would, you know, but the laws in the country don't allow this any longer. So going to a college campus today, you're not getting very good medical. You're not going to get the inside information on the player. So you have to find out how to get information. Information is the most valuable tool in the NFL draft. And really being able to determine character, right? That's been the hardest thing. If you look at some of the greatest draft mistakes, it's been really not over the evaluation of the talent. It's been the evaluation of the character, whether that means performance enhancement drugs that was in the character that made the guy a better player, or whether it was a character off the field. And that's the challenge to get into. And with Carter, you know, nobody at Georgia is going to say a bad word about Carter. They're going to say works hard, or they're going to say all the right things. You're going to have to find a way to dig deeper and to see who you're getting. And can you manage this? And then whomever drafts Carter, and somebody's going to draft him, whoever, then you got to have a plan for him. Okay, this is what we have to prepare for. You know, this is what we need to work on. And you're going to have to teach the young man how to become a professional player. We just can't assume they're just going to know how to be a pro. You're going to have to spend time teaching them. And it's got to be hands-on teaching. It just can't be, okay, we're going to go to the rookie seminar. Go ahead and you figure everything out. No, that ain't going to work. You got to spend time coaching the kid up on how to be a pro.
Can you divulge any tactics? Because now, like you said, you can't go talk to a coach and
Yeah.
a trainer and figure anything out. Like, are you hiring private investigators?
My
what's going
favorite
on?
one, God rest her soul, when I was in Cleveland, we hired a young lady named Carly McCord, who unfortunately died tragically in a plane accident on way to watch her father-in-law coach in the LSU championship game. And I hired her because she had this unique ability she was a broadcaster by trade, but she also had an ability to connect with players, and they loved her and they talked to her. And she had a sorority sisters all over the country. So if I asked her a question about Johnny Manziel, she knew the answer. And the one thing you always want to do is find players when they're comfortable. They relax. So if you go to campus, if I went to go scout Mike Golic today at Notre Dame, I wouldn't spend time at the Notre Dame office. I'd go to the local brewery and ask the bartender about him. I'd go to the campus security and find out about him. I would do everything. I would go to the sorority houses and see who he's dating, who he dated, because that's the only way you're going to get real information. And Carly was such an amazing person. I only had her for 1 year when I was in Cleveland and got fired, but she was incredible. I called her. I was in New England. I called her and said, make sense of this Collins. Remember when Leroy Collins had the incident where his girlfriend got shot and everybody thought it was him? I called her up and said, what do you think? And she said, there's no way he did that. I know this kid. There's no way he did it. I know his family. I know the situation. And we didn't draft him because of the uncertainty. We had a whole security department in New England working to find out the facts. She knew him before anybody. So that's the kind of stuff you have to do today. You have to disguise yourself. Years ago, we sent Jim Schwartz, now the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. We sent him. He was a young scout with us. This is before he became a coach. We sent him to the Playboy All-American Club weekend out in Phoenix, Arizona. Always happened on Mother's Day weekend. He was single at the time. We sent him out there, didn't let him wear one thing that said Cleveland Browns. He looked like he was basically working in the custodial department of the Biltmore. And when his notes came back about what he described of the players were just incredible. Ray Lewis's notes, the most dynamic leader I've ever seen, could rally people around. That's the information you got to find. And I saved those notes. I still have them from 19, and he described everybody perfectly because that's the only vision you can get.
So, Michael, in this era of there's so much tape available to watch or in person to watch or information to get, we're about to have at least 4. We'll see if Hendon Hooker goes into the back of the first round. But we'll have at least 4 quarterbacks go in the first round from Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. And history says 2 will be a bust. With all the information we have, why does that happen?
Because we try to make something that they're not. Okay? Will Levis. I like Will Levis. Why did he transfer from Penn State? Why couldn't he beat out Sean Clifford? If he's as good as everybody says he is, Penn State should have won a national championship with him at quarterback, right? I mean, so there's things that you can't answer. Why did Mitchell Trubisky, the player of the year in the state of Ohio, Mr. Ohio, have to go to North Carolina? Why didn't he go to Ohio State? Why did he sit 3 years behind? Bill Walsh taught me this years ago. Don't take the one-year player and look forward. Take the one-year player and look back. So we have to look back on some of these kids. And I think really, to me, and I've said this on my show, I've said it on my podcast, it's a 1 quarterback draft. To me, it's a 1 quarterback draft. I think there's one guy that I could say he's going to be a really good player. I think the Bears would have never traded the first pick overall in the draft if Bryce Young were 6'2". The 5'10" allowed them to do it. I think he'll overcome the 5'10", but I'm hesitant to say that because there's not a lot of history. But he's unique. He's got instincts, awareness, timing. Walsh would be able to, if I always sit there and say, who would Walsh like in this draft? And Walsh would like Bryce Young. Would he like anybody else? I don't think so because their feet aren't tied to their arm. There's a little bit, Anthony Richardson's a great athlete. I think he should have gone back to school. Tremendous athlete. But you're going to spend 2 years getting him ready to be a year away from being ready. It's going to take a while.
How does a quarterback like Josh Allen change that equation, though, when you have teams that can find someone who, if you look back, why did he go to Wyoming, right? That's not really a Power 5 quarterback powerhouse university. Why didn't he go to an Ohio State or an Alabama?
Probably because where he grew up. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, why did Aaron Rodgers only have one offer to go to Cal? Why did Tom Brady just have Michigan? Tom Brady was drafted by baseball. I think that's part of it. I think you are part of your history is part of it. And I think if, what Josh Allen was able to do for Wyoming's football program was pretty good. Now, if Anthony Richardson played up in Wyoming, would he have had similar numbers to what Josh Allen did? We know he's improved his accuracy. He's a big man. He's physical. He runs with the ball. But there's always an exception to every rule, right? There's always some guy that kind of makes things happen that you're not used to. But you can't live on exceptions because if you draft exceptions, you become a team of exceptions.
So as you go through the draft board and everybody sets theirs and has multiple players, obviously, in case that another player is gone, what's the acceptable amount of distance between draft picks before you get to this guy was a reach? If you have him at 10, but you want to maybe have to think you got to take him at 8 or 7. Where is that line of this is now a reach?
Well, it really matters how they play, right? But if you're taking a guy at 4 and you could, like Cleveland Farrell, the Raiders take him at 4, he probably should have gone somewhere in the 20s. He didn't even run a 40. I mean, Al Davis, who's the man who loved 40s more than anybody, would have never done that. He's not drafting anybody without a 40. So I think there's that. There is certainly draft management. I mean, we were getting ready to, in 1986, Jess, this is long before you were born, but in 1986, we were getting ready to take, Bill Walsh sent me to the blackboard. Do you even know what blackboards are, Jess? Sent me to a blackboard, right, and said, write these 3 names down. And I said, okay, coach. And I wrote Gerald Robinson, defensive end, Auburn. He said, write John L. Williams, running back, Florida. Write Ronnie Harmon, running back, Iowa. Okay, wrote them on the blackboard. Next pick, Robinson goes. Next pick, Williams goes. Next pick, Harmon goes. We have nobody left to pick. We're going to pick Larry Roberts. And Bill knew you couldn't pick Larry Roberts the 20th pick. So we bought a half hour of time, traded with Dallas. They picked Mike Sherrard. And then we kept moving back. And in that draft, we end up with Larry Roberts, Tim McKyer, John Taylor, Charles Haley, Steve Wallace, Tom Rathman, Kevin Fagan, and Don Griffin. We end up with 7 guys who could. So sometimes when you move back to get really good starters, maybe not the blue chip player. And I think you have to really understand that. That's part of the horizontal board. Everybody talks about the vertical board in football, right? Okay, here's how I have this guy ranked. Well, there's a horizontal board. How does this guy, this quarterback or this running back compare to this offensive tackle? Who's going to make that decision? And so the horizontal board and the vertical board are really important. And I think that's where value comes in, Mike.
Can you explain what goes on every year when you have a player? This year, I think Michael Mayer is a good example of this, and we're both Notre Dame grads, so very relevant to us. We watched Michael Mayer play. He was outstanding at Notre Dame, broke almost every tight end record. Seems like he's going to be the consensus first tight end off the board. And then, like the weeks leading up to the draft, all of a sudden you hear maybe he's not the best tight end. Maybe Dalton Kincaid is the best tight end. Maybe he's going to be the 3rd tight end off the board. Like, what happens between the end of college football season and the draft where someone who you think is a sure thing, all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe this guy's not as good as we think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same club as you on Michael Mayer. I thought he would be worthy of a top 10 pick. And then when I watched the tape, I didn't see the blocking that I was hoping to see. I didn't see the great separation. I thought he was a bigger man than he measured to be. I thought he had Gronk-like size. And I think he's still a good player. Now, don't get me wrong, but I think I was a little bit disappointed to where if you have a grading system, you couldn't grade him as high as you thought. When TV scouting him, I was really high on him. But when I tape scouted him, I wasn't as high on him. I'll give you the example the other way. Like, I didn't think Bryce Young was a good enough player to be even talked about. But then when I watched the tape, I was like, well, wait a minute. This guy's really, really good. This guy's like, it's not even close. Like, there's Bryce Young, and then there's a huge gap between the next one. So I think it happens sometimes. You get a perception of a player from watching him, and then when you study him and you compare his times to other times, and then you have to grade him in a grading system where you have to describe the player. What can he do? What's his impact on 3rd down? Can he win against man-to-man coverage? Can he separate against the corner? What can he do? Those things become a little bit harder to manage once you watch the tape.
Isn't there a time, though, where you have to just believe what you see? And for, like, Michael Mayer, like, he just got the job done.
Yeah.
Because I agree. He's not a guy that's going to separate you. He's not a guy that's going to stretch the defense. But he's just a good guy that blocks well enough and makes the play each time you need him to get the job done.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, to me, it's just when you have a grading system, you got to match what he does to the grading system. And sometimes you can't grade him high enough to get him where it is. Would I be surprised if he had a great NFL career? No. But to me, I was disappointed. I was expecting a better version of Gronk. Maybe I had my expectations up too high. I think that's the other thing that happens to us in scouting is we get these biases put into our minds, and it ruins us a little bit. I really like this guy, and then you start collecting data that supports why you like him.
So let's look. One other thing about the draft that is interesting to me when you get in that room you guys are in and the decisions you have to make. a team like Arizona has a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah.
So sitting at 3 is, and I don't know what your grade on is, but let's just say it's a great grade on Will Anderson because they're not taking a quarterback. And let's say their grade is just astronomical on Will Anderson. But they got a lot of holes to fill. What's the deciding factor on make that pick or trade back and get a whole bunch of assets to take care of maybe some of our other issues?
Think of it like playing pool, right? You know you're going to make this shot. Okay, you're going to put the cube. You're going to make this shot in pool. But where's your next shot coming from? So if I either take Will Anderson and I move back into, say, I move to the cluster of 13, 14, right? I'm there. Who am I getting here? And then what did I get for it? And then remember this: every pick becomes a player, right? The Raiders traded Amari Cooper. It ended up being Jonathan Abrams. Was that, so every pick becomes a player. So you want to be able to, this is why I said today on my podcast, I thought it was a 90% chance the Rodgers deal would get done, because if you're the Packers, you want to know who you're trading Rodgers for, at least in this draft, right? So now I got the 13th pick, I got 40. I can quantify it a little bit better. If I wait till the next year's draft, I have no idea. Plus, the Jets will probably pick somewhere in the high 20s. I think that's kind of how you do it. You have to measure it. If I move here, so if you trade away from a blue chip player, what am I getting in return for that? That's what you have to ask yourself. And that's why sometimes teams trade down and sometimes teams don't trade down, because they don't want to trade away from an elite player.
So the Jordan Love trade the Jordan Love draft, I should say, was 2020. Do you think there will be anything like that in this draft that sets the wheels in motion to some future crazy transaction similar to what's happened with Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, we saw it with Trey Lance the other way, right? I mean, that started off the motion with Trey Lance, and now there's all these rumors that Trey Lance, and I think there are probably some substantial rumors to him getting traded on draft day, because I think some of these teams are going to see it as an opportunity. I can't predict. I mean, I wish I loved these quarterbacks more than I do in this draft. To me, one of the reasons why I don't think teams are going to trade up for a quarterback, at least into the top 5, is because they all have something wrong with them. That doesn't mean they can't be good players. It just means they're not clean. They're what we call clean. They're not perfect. The only guy that was, and he's still not clean because of his height, is Bryce Young. So I can't imagine, like Mike said earlier, 2 of the 4 of these guys are probably not even going to play. Here's the question I would ask both of you. Of these 4 quarterbacks that might go in the first round, how many of them do you think will get their 5th-year option picked up?
Boy, that's another great question. And that one's so hard to tell because you look at Tua. You'd say the first 5 games, they're going to pick his option up. Then all of a sudden he starts getting his head bounced off the turf, and they treated him, they handled it horribly. Now you wait. So that's always a tough one. I agree with you.
So if it's not a lock that you're going to pick up the 5th-year option, like that's the question. If you're picking if you want to trade away from Will Anderson, am I trading away to guys that I don't even want the 5th-year option on?
Yeah, and there's also so many variables as to like how good the team is that you're getting drafted to, right? You could be a pretty decent quarterback and you don't get a 5th-year option because you lost a lot of games on a crappy team for a couple of years and now you're out of the league or whatever.
But think about this though, Jess. Lamar Jackson sat in that room. None of these guys in this draft have had a better college career than Lamar Jackson. None of them have. Okay? Lamar Jackson sat in that draft, the green room, for 31 picks. He won a Heisman Trophy. He's come in the National Football League. He's won 45 games. Like, I don't know what more the guy has to do to prove he's a really good player, but he got overlooked in a draft, and yet you wonder, like, what was going on? Like, how could this happen, right? And so Lamar takes over a team in Baltimore. They're 4-5. They're not a good team at all. Joe Flacco's playing quarterback. They go 6-1 the second half when he starts and should have beaten Kansas City in one of those games. And that's what makes a difference. So I think the one loss, when a great player takes over a quarterbacking job, he makes the team great.
All right, that's the draft, and that's rookie quarterbacks. Let's move on to some veteran quarterbacks. All right, Michael, you brought him up when we talked about the draft, started bringing up some of the other quarterbacks, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, Lamar Jacksons and such. So let's go there. The Aaron Rodgers deal finally happens. He is a Jet. So what happens here is Green Bay to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, their first-round pick, which is number 15, and fifth-round pick, 170. And Green Bay gets the first-round pick of the Jets, which is 13th, second round, 42nd, sixth round, 207. and their 24 conditional second round that if Aaron plays 65% of the plays, which you would expect he would, that turns into a first-round pick. So first, Michael, we knew this deal was going to get done. Compensation both ways, you think worked out okay?
I think, look, Aaron Rodgers is still, even though he's 40 years old, he's still a really good player. I think the whole holdup on this deal was, how do you quantify, is this a one-year transaction or a two-year transaction? And I think that was been the sticking point all along. I kind of felt like this is a really good deal for the Packers because just like as you mentioned, if he doesn't play 65% of the plays next year, this is a disaster for the Jets, right? And I think it's a good trade for the Jets because they hang on to their first round pick. They still get a good player at 15. 13 to 15 probably would cost you a fourth round pick to flip there. So they got an extra fourth in the deal. I think it worked out pretty well for them, but that 65% threshold, that's probably what they spent most of their time negotiating on. I'm sure, the Jets wanted it to be 85, the Packers wanted it to be, 45, and they kind of settled on 65, I think that's the key. Because if he doesn't play 65%, they're in trouble, and the Packers are, the trade's going to be bad.
Is this a trade that you can only say worked if they win the Super Bowl, get to the Super Bowl? Is there a line to you when you were in management that says, well, just like the Rams when they traded away everything to do what they did, but they got a Super Bowl, so it's all worth it? What's all worth it for the Jets?
I think it's got to be a Super Bowl because they still have Zach Wilson, so they're hoping to rehabilitate him. Whether that they can or not, I don't know. But I think Aaron coming in the building, they still could say the taxation of this deal isn't going to be as harsh as it was for the Rams or even the Bucs. I think the two teams in really the biggest cap struggles, even entering this year, the teams that have won Super Bowls 2 years ago. I mean, the Rams and the Bucs. The Bucs are in horrible cap shape, and so are the Rams. I mean, the Rams can't even sign anybody unless it's a minimum player. But they got a Super Bowl ring, and it's worth it, right? I think for this Jet team, it won't be as costly after Aaron leaves. The Packers are going to incur some cap debt on this. The Jets are going to have to restructure some contracts here in the future to make this trade. They're going to need to pick up about $8 million worth of cap room. They can do it. They've got a lot of guys to do it with. So it won't be as lingering down the road, perhaps, as those other two teams were.
Explain the Packers cap hit, though. It's, I think, a $40 million dead money cap hit this year. How do they negotiate that with now going through the draft, signing more players, etc.?
Well, they could designate them the June 1 afterwards. They traded them, and it's a June 1, so they could push some of the money. They have about $26 million of cap room that they could but he's going to eat a good portion of that up. They won't pick up he has an option in his contract. Now, he redid his contract for the Jets, which is I don't know if he'll redo his contract for the Packers and then they'll trade, or they'll trade him and then he'll redo his deal, which is I think probably will happen. But the Packers have enough room. The Jets have to create some room. The Jets have been waiting to create room until the trade came through. I'm sure they're working on it right now.
I love the fact that we do this June 1st designation. Someone gets traded in April and we designated June 1st. I mean, what the hell are we keeping dates for?
It's all just an accounting procedure, Mike. It's just so the trades can go through and the teams that have bad caps can kind of still make – look, the Bucs are in really bad shape with their cap. They don't even have a lot of guys to go to get cap room. And so, they can't trade Shaq Barrett or cut Shaq Barrett. That would be too costly. There's been Devin White talk about him being traded. That would be costly. So that's when you get yourself locked in. And look, they won a Super Bowl, so you can say, oh, it wasn't, but it was worth it.
Absolutely worth it. You're absolutely right, because I called a few of their games and looking at their money, they were going to be in cap hell, but they got the Super Bowl. So it paid off. The Rams got the Super Bowl, so it paid off. So we'll see what the Jets get. So along the lines of these vet quarterbacks, we had a few that can sign, and Lamar Jackson has not gotten that fully guaranteed deal that he wants. I don't know where his head is now about that. But there was Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert, three guys that we said, okay, they're the next in line. Will one of them try and get a fully guaranteed deal? Jalen Hurts did not, took the $255. Guaranteed with injury is like $180. And he said money is nice, championships are better. And he said you need a village to win. So what did you think of his deal looking forward to other quarterbacks, was it a good deal for him to take?
I think it's the kind of deal that a great leader takes. I mean, Brady's made his whole career doing this kind of deal. You know, he does. You need a village. It's hard if everybody just takes all the money. It's challenging. You know, I mean, when you think about the great Peyton Manning's career, he's won 2 Super Bowls, one with a great defensive team in Denver and the other with the Colts. So and I'm not saying he took all the money, but it's hard. It's harder to do that. And so you need a little give and take. You need somebody willing to work on that. I think Lamar, if I were the Colts, I've been saying this all offseason. If I were the Colts, I'd pick probably Paris in the left tackle from the Ohio State, and I would try to trade for Lamar because that would satisfy 2 needs. Wouldn't you rather have Lamar Jackson than take a chance on any of these rookie quarterbacks? And you say, well, you got to pay Lamar. Well, I mean, Lamar's going to get a contract that's going to be Lamar's not. This is not his last contract. He's going to get 2 more contracts. He's going to get another one after this. You would flip the AFC South. Indy might be the favorite. So I don't understand why people are hesitant about it. They say he's injured. Well, Jalen Hurts missed games last year too. You know, and look, Justin Fields misses games all the time. The guy's been sacked 91 times in 2 years. I mean, you think he's not going to miss games?
And it's amazing, these running quarterbacks, they quite honestly they get hurt more in the pocket. When they start running, they have actually more control of their body. So what should Lamar Jackson expect now? We know the fully guaranteed, like Deshaun Watson, there's no shot that's going to happen. I don't even think owners had to collude to do that. Yeah. None of them wanted to do that, and they hate Haslam for doing it. What now do you think in his mind should be a realistic to get?
You know, I mean, look, the thing that you want as a player like Lamar, you want to have the injury guarantee. You're not going to get cut for skill. I mean, think about it. It's like what I love this when a contract comes out. They say, well, $100 million is guaranteed in the first year. Oh, really? Like, seriously? Like, we're going to sign this guy and give him 50 to sign him. We're not going to guarantee in his first year we're going to cut him? Like, that's like the biggest fallacy of all. I think if you're Lamar, I would be more inclined to say, look, we're not going to get cut for skill. We're going to get cut if we have an injury. And if the injury prevents us from having the skill, then we're going to get paid. So the reason for it to be funded like the Browns did with Watson, you have to have skill, injury, and salary cap in one sentence. Teams don't want to do that. It's a funding issue. It's not that they don't want to guarantee it. You have to send money to the league office and put it in an escrow account. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. So I think it really comes down to Baltimore sitting down with the kid and saying, hey, look, here's the deal. You're going to get another bite of the apple. You know, like, is it that? Would you not? I mean, Lamar Jackson's going to play for the next 3 years. Why wouldn't you guarantee the whole thing anyway?
Yeah, I would agree on like a 3-year deal, and I do think he ends up back in Baltimore. Time will tell, but the domino's starting to fall. Obviously, now we knew Aaron would get done. Lamar Hurts is signed, so we'll see about the veteran quarterbacks. And Michael, we get to talk about a new batch of millionaires coming up pretty soon in the draft. We appreciate your time very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jess. Thanks, Mike.
We already talked about one of our nightmares being over, which was the Aaron Rodgers debacle. But the other nightmare that we've been living through is the last 4 weeks without Formula One.
Oh.
But finally, Formula One will be back in Azerbaijan with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Mike. And this is also the first sprint race of the season this weekend on Saturday. And they're doing a new format. So let me explain.
Explain that. Yeah.
Because I also probably need this explained to me, but they started doing this a couple years ago in Formula One where they have a sprint race, which is like, you know, only 30 laps or something like that,
right,
to determine the placement on the grid for the Sunday race, and you can win points in the sprint race, and it kind of counts as qualifying. But this year they're doing it differently. They're doing qualifying for the sprint race, and then the sprint race is like a standalone opportunity to win points. So a sprint race, obviously, it's shorter. You're not probably going to stop and change your tires. It's just like fastest car wins,
right,
that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different than, you know, the strategy of like a full 2-hour-long race. But then there will still be a full race on Sunday for full points in the championship, and there will be separate qualifying for that. So this is all kind of new this year and this weekend. I'm sure it's going to be confusing, but I'm excited because it's been a month. It's been a month without any cars going vroom vroom.
So just so I understand, the sprint races will then determine the pole positions for the Sunday race?
Not this weekend. That's what they
Not
were
this
doing
weekend.
previously, and
Right.
drivers didn't like that. So
Okay.
What I read is that they're not doing that this weekend. This is a standalone race, and the winner of the race does not automatically get pole position in Sunday's race. They're going to have separate qualifying on Friday, I believe, for Sunday, and then a smaller qualifying practice session Saturday for the sprint race Saturday. It's a lot, Mike, and I'm probably getting some of the finer points mixed up. But that's basically how I understand it. And of course, this is causing lots of controversy because, you know, the drivers don't like the sprint races and the team principals don't like the sprint races, and they don't want one in Baku, which has like these really close walls next to the racetrack. So if you get in a crash during the sprint race, it might cost you a ton of money, and it might cost you a ton of points. So Christian Horner's not happy about it. Everyone's complaining. So this is going to be a whole thing this weekend, and I think it should be exciting.
But it's interesting because the guy who runs Haas, Gunther Steiner, he thinks, or I think there's going to be a vote that like half the races next year might have sprint races.
Yeah. And I think they're also still have to vote on the format for this race. Like, I think this is all still kind of like they're trying new things, basically. I think what Liberty Media wants is more eyeballs on qualifying and on Saturdays so they can create two, exciting television products for a lot of these races where there might not get as many people to tune in on a Saturday. So, but then of course it causes conflict with everyone who's actually participating in it because they feel like it cheapens what has been like the more traditional format of doing qualifying and then the races. So,
and they're also talking about expanding races too to like 25 races. Which is cool by me. The more, the merrier.
Right. This is actually, I think this year there's 23 with the canceled race. So it's like the longest season in Formula One history. And they're trying to stretch it out. I saw the head of F1 saying that maybe they'll add another race in the United States down the line. They floated New York as a possible place, which is crazy. There's already 3 races in the States. So, would they take one away or add a fourth? So, yeah, it's not going away anytime soon.
All right. Well, I'm glad there's finally a race coming up again.
But I'm bearing the lead because what I really wanted to talk about was the rumors that Fernando Alonso and Taylor Swift are dating.
So what do we think?
I don't know. But I'm sure you know what Dumois is, Mike. It's
yes.
Of course. They are the ones who posted this blind item about it.
Right.
So I think what we should do, now that we both have talked about this, we should get Gojo on the line and talk about it next week with him because he's the Taylor Swift expert and we can figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of it. But that is the major news of the week.
That is a lot of money getting together right there if those two are hooking up. That is something else. All right, we will get Gojo on for that. We want to talk about a show announcement and times and such, but real quick, if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook, you can find all kind of great props and odds for the draft, like Bryce Young is minus 1,600 to be the number 1 pick, CJ Stroud plus 800. A lot of different things you could pick from. But Jess, fill in everybody because I don't understand a lot of this of our show and where it's going to be.
Starting next week, Mike, we're going to be airing at 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays on the DraftKings Network.
Yeah.
And you can find the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus if you have a Samsung Smart TV. If you don't have it, it's available still on podcast and on YouTube every week, 5 p.m. on Tuesdays, about that time usually. And yeah, we're really excited to be part of the DraftKings Network, Mike. You're going to be in Boston to do draft coverage with DraftKings, and we're excited to launch this new iteration of the show. But if you listen to us on podcast, we'll still be here every week.
Yeah, we'll still be here on podcast. We'll just be DraftKings Network is going to have a whole lineup of shows, and we'll be on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock doing our show. Then, as Jess mentioned, our podcast will go on at 5 o'clock. I'm just still one of those. I talk into the microphone wherever you all put it, you put it. I don't really. That's why we had this show announcement, and I was like, okay, I can not be part of this because I'll screw it up somehow, some way. I don't know about this.
Yeah, and I have to pretend like I understand it because I can't be like, oh, I don't know either, because then you'll make fun of me for not getting it, and then I'll betray the whole gist of the show, which is that you're the one that struggles with technology, and I'm like filling you in on things. But you knew what Dumois was, so that was.
I'm not going to lie. I lied. I don't really know what it means.
Oh, my God. All right. We're bringing on Gojo next week, and we're going to explain all of this.
Do you think he knows what it means?
Oh, 100%.
All right. Well, I look forward to being educated by the both of you because you guys are so much smarter than me. Goodbye.